Hello there friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. In today's video we're going to be focusing on one particular element of the 6th episode of Ahsoka, so there will be spoilers here. When Morgan, Elsbeth, and her crew arrives on Peridea to meet Thrawn, we find the Chiss Grand Admiral already quickly moving to prepare his forces for their eventual voyage out of the system and back to the normal galaxy. I get a sense that there's some great hidden evil on this planet. We'll talk a little bit more about that in another video. And I think even the Great Mothers, who I imagine were born here and have lived here for quite some time. I mean, Thrawn seems to indicate that they're all on exile.
We'll all escape this exile thanks to the efforts of Morgan and Elsbeth.
Although he might just be talking about himself. But anyway, the Night Sisters seem to really want to leave. You could say they're dying to leave. But they won't leave until Thrawn loads up something that is really important for the Great Mothers.
This is Enoch, captain of my guard. He shall begin the cargo transfer as per my agreement with the Great Mothers.
So when Thrawn got tossed to this far end of the universe by those space whales, he struck up an alliance with the Night Sisters. We're not exactly sure what kind of aid the Great Mothers have given Thrawn, but it's very clear their magic is all over his stormtroopers, or Night Troopers. We went into an in-depth analysis of the Night Troopers in our previous video. What I'm interested in today is what these Night Troopers are doing. What are they bringing into the Chimera? According to Morgan Elsbeth, it's something that the Great Mothers have been storing in the catacombs beneath the fortress that the Chimera has landed upon. And eventually we get to see Anoke's Night Troopers begin moving what I think are caskets from below via repulsor lift onto Thrawn's Star Destroyer. So I think it's pretty safe to say that there's most likely bodies inside of these things that look like caskets. The bigger question is, why are the Dathmiri bringing bodies with them? What's going on here? Well, you gotta understand Dathmiri culture to really get why these bodies are so important. Now, I do have to say, guys, that the information I have here, all the lore, it comes from the animated series and some comics and some of the Legends content as well, and it's mainly going to be focused on the Dathmiri Night Sisters, which are, a different branch from the new Peridea Night Sisters we've just met. We don't really know who came first. I'm going to guess that the Peridea Night Sisters came first. For some reason, they feel a little more ancient, more developed than the Dathmiri Night Sisters. But it's very possible that these two groups have different cultural practices, so keep that in mind when you watch the rest of the video. I also have to mention that some of the more mystical things that we've seen in Dave Filoni's animated series have been altered to fit into a more streamlined presentation for live action audiences. It's a different audience, maybe an older audience than the animated audience, and a lot of these fans are much more casual, so they don't want to have to do all the background work and, reading all the novels, watching all the animated series to understand what's going on. So things seem to be a bit more streamlined. Anyway, in the Star Wars galaxy, you have a bunch of different types of organizations. People don't just organize themselves by their planet or by their species or nation. Like the Mandalorians, for instance, who are united by their shared belief system. And it's not really a religion, it's more like a way of life, although for some it is kind of a religion. See, it's complicated. The Night Sisters are more like a covenant, a sisterhood of sorts. And for most of their history, at least on Dathomir, they were organized into clans. So the clans were the power centers, and this is where all the resources were actually pooled together. Now, most cultures with power focused at the clan level are incapable of developing to the same size as larger nations, which allows them to pool technology and resources instead of, fighting amongst each other at the clan level. This is probably why the Dathmiri were never able to develop into a larger civilization on their planet, and this is probably why they were oftentimes exploited by outside forces. The more extreme your beliefs are, the more requirements you place on membership, the smaller your group is. When you build a larger nation, you have to ultimately be more accepting of many different types of people, different types of views, and so on, and then you create a more powerful society. And for a short period of time, that's exactly what the powerful clan mother, Mother Talzin, tried to do. She would eventually unite all of the clans together into one single clan. This is a big deal because by doing this, all the clans had to now share resources with one another, and one of those resources happened to be their ancestors, either in body or spirit form. I mean, the perception of death in Night Sister society was a bit different from the wider galaxy. But to share your ancestors with the other clans really forced the Night Sisters to change their perception of what their identity was. Now, from a species standpoint, most Night Sisters were Dathmiri in origin. This was basically a subspecies of Zabrak. The main difference here is the Dathmiri Zabrak females don't have horns, whereas normal Zabrak females typically have horns. The male Dathomiri Zabraks did have horns on their heads, and they were called Night Brothers, and they couldn't actually join a clan and were used mainly for just breeding. Although powerful individuals like Maul were respected by the Night Sisters. And so for the most part, Dathomir was a female-dominated planet that was ruled by matriarchs. Now, humans like Morgan Elsbeth could actually join the ranks of the sisterhood by improving themselves. And so as you can see, one has to join a Night Sister clan. You're not just simply born into one. And there's a process known as a baptism that actually has to occur. And luckily, we see this actually happen during the Clone Wars animated series. See, Asajj Ventress, despite clearly being a Dathomiri witch, was originally taken away from her clan as an infant by a bandit named Halstead. She was taken to the world of Ratatak, where she was discovered by the Jedi Knight Kynarek. Kynarek was kind of a vigilante, and he would run around the galaxy fighting for the Forgotten. Overall, really good guy, and he actually taught Asajj Ventress how to utilize her potent Force abilities, but he would die as well, and Asajj Ventress would be consumed by the dark side and anger after this happens, and she would eventually be discovered by Count Dooku. Asajj Ventress, by the way, is one of the most interesting characters during the Clone Wars period. Her story needs to be told. She's a highly underrated character. I highly recommend you check out the novel Dark Disciple. Also, Dooku Jedi Lost has a little bit more further information about her twisted life. Her and Maul, both Dathomiri, are basically poached by the Sith, and their lives are completely ruined, despite the fact that deep down they're nowhere near as chaotic as the Sith are. I think it's just their ashen complexion, or in Maul's case, his red and black face with the horns, that makes us feel like they're evil, but they really aren't. They're just troubled people. Anyway, Asajj Ventress gets betrayed by Dooku after his own master, Sidious, was like, oh, she's getting too strong, you're gonna have to get rid of her. And so Asajj Ventress was basically left for dead, and with nowhere to run, she actually decides to venture back to her homeworld of Dathomir, a place she hasn't been since she was abducted. Asajj Ventress knew nothing about her people, the Night Sisters, but I guess somewhere deep down she understood that they would be willing to take back one of their own. Especially when you consider how powerful Asajj Ventress is. The Night Sisters, the Dathomiri in general, really do value power. And luckily, Mother Talzin actually remembers Asajj Ventress' mother. So she remembers that she was taken away as an infant. Now, when Asajj Ventress arrives onto the planet of Dathomir, she collapses from her injuries, and Talzin directs the Night Sisters to use the Waters of Life, a liquid ichor from the planet, probably fortified with the light side of the Force. See, it's not just dark side Force powers for these guys, to heal her. You see, Talzin not only remembers Asajj Ventress' mother, she also has suffered through a similar experience. Her son, Darth Maul, or just Maul, when he was born, was taken away from her by Sidious. Well, actually, stolen away. So there's this mutual hatred that Asajj and Talzin both have. They do not like the Sith. But even though Asajj Ventress is technically a member of their clan through blood, Asajj still has to go through a baptism. She has to renounce both the Jedi and the Sith ways and pledge her loyalty to a Night Sister clan and the Night Sister way of life.
You must give up the ways of the Sith and return to our fold.
You know, I'm not someone who really likes joining sides when I play Starfield and I'm flying around the galaxy. I don't really like joining factions, but at the end of the day, you have to join factions for perks. And I'll tell you what, the Night Sisters have some really, really strange perks. So in order to undergo this ceremony, you need a Night Sister shaman like Talzin, check, and a full coven of spellcasters, check. Asajj then steps into a dark river near the Night Sister fortress, and they make her swear this standard oath of loyalty to the Night Sisters.
Do you pledge yourself to the sisterhood, to the magics, and the old ways?
She's also forced to renounce her old ways.
Do you abandon your old life for this new one? I do. Your loyalty, your life.
Her loyalty and her life. At this point, she's dunked underwater and she's consumed by the magical ichor. Here's the thing, I like to think of this process as like the initial Bluetooth pairing when you get a new pair of headphones. You're making this connection, and hopefully in the future, should you make a connection again, it'll be a lot easier and almost automatic. It's about normalizing the Force user to the pool of magic on Dathomir, this magical ichor. The Night Sisters, unlike other Force-using sects, don't have much individual power. Most of their power comes through their shared connection to the magical Ichor. Asajj Ventress is actually a rarity amongst her own people. She is immensely powerful with the Force, whether she's connected to the magical Ichor or on Dathomir or not. And that's why she's like Mother Talzin and Marin, who are both very powerful in their own way. But most of these Night Sisters are like borderline Force sensitive. Without the magical Ichor, they're just normal beings, and whenever they step away from the planet, they actually don't have access to this power, usually. Now, if someone really powerful, like a Great Mother, imbues a Night Sister with powers, then she can also take that to another planet. The problem is when you pledge your life and loyalty to the Night Sisters, that also means your afterlife, or if you don't believe in the afterlife, your corpse. It's like, you know, you're agreeing to be an organ donor. As we mentioned, the Night Sisters have a very different view of death. See, a lot of people assume that the witches Dathomir are, naturalists, they're one with nature, the very twisted nature on their planet, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Take a closer look at where the Night Sisters live, inside of a stone fortress, just like they do on the world of Peridia. I think it's because they seem more, primitive from a technological standpoint. We might assume they're naturalists and they love living in nature. But what the Night Sisters actually are crude survivors. Despite their ferocious nature, they have been preyed upon by various factions throughout galactic history. As we mentioned before, the Sith have stolen 2 of their most promising members from them. Various more technologically capable factions, even corporations, have tried to take Dathomir and exploit the resources on there. Because of their more simplistic society, inability to create a larger unified clan before Mother Talzin took charge, this really led to low population numbers and a lack of technological development on the planet. And so the Dathomiri witches have always been relatively harmless. This is why the Jedi have always left them alone, more or less, but this is also why they've been victims to a lot of larger outside powers. And because the Night Sisters are not willing to change their way of life, they have to go to extreme lengths to simply survive, and so everything and everyone in their order is a tool or weapon to be used. This is also why the Night Sisters don't differentiate between the dark side and the light side of the Force. They use whatever they can get their hands on for whatever they need at that moment. And their view on death is kind of like this as well. It's not very ideological. They were not afraid of death. They simply understood that this was a process that everyone went through. And at the same time, after being baptized, after connecting their body to the communal pool of magic, they also agreed to let their bodies become tools for future Night Sisters to use. This is why the Night Sisters have this baptism. This is why loyalty is so important for these clans, and that is because they're trying to fight for their future, preserve future generations. And I think this is something that is understated about the Night Sisters. They are very loyal to one another, as loyal as the Mandalorians are to each other. Tough circumstances and a tough history breed societies that are fanatic about loyalty. Even if it means subduing individual interests, even if it means turning the corpses of your ancestors into weapons. It's a very communal vibe in that way. If the Night Sisters were a faction in some RTS, this would be their racial trait. Every Night Sister that falls can once again return as an undead ghoul who will fight to defend the clan. Now, on Dathomir, there is an entire ceremony that's required during the funeral process to prepare the body to become a future zombie. The body's first cleansed with fragrant oils, a cloth is washed in magical water, and then hand-braided together to wrap the sister in. Meanwhile, spellcasters recite the spell of protection instead of, I'm guessing, using normal preservative chemicals or something like that. And at the same time, a shell is built out of usually animal hide or rancor hide. And on Dathomir, these pods would eventually be hung up on grave thorns, a specific type of crooked tree that actually works really well for hanging these pods on. It keeps these pods out of reach for scavengers that are on the forest floor, and also makes it a lot easier for the zombies to deploy. They kind of just fall down and are ready to fight. They don't have to like dig their way out of the ground or something. Oh, and in order to make these zombies activate, you have to use the chant of resurrection.
Unos rise, awake
That is absolutely terrifying. Night Sister zombies are also terrifying. They're extremely fast and quite strong. This combination of speed and power means they can easily overwhelm military forces that are not used to fighting in hand-to-hand combat, like the New Republic. So I do believe that this is what the Night Sisters on Peridia are keeping in the catacombs below. Yes, they're, in a completely different galaxy, but I feel like there are some shared cultural practices here. Instead of putting them into pods, you know, like the Dathmiri do. They have more elegant solution, actual tombs and catacombs. And even though the way they prepare their dead is a bit different, the Peridea branch of Night Sisters is still similar to the Dathmiri one in this way. They make a big deal about loyalty, and bringing their ancestors and family with them to another galaxy is an extremely important part of their belief system. It's not just about having an instant army that could spring up from the dead, it's also about honoring the loyalty and sacrifices of previous generations. And I think it's very possible that these freaking zombies the Night Sisters have will play a big role in the upcoming battle between Thrawn and the New Republic. I guess the question is, how many bodies do the Night Sisters have in the catacombs below?
I have seen the catacombs. It will take some time. At least 3 rotations.
An acceptable time frame.
Okay, so 3 rotations. Let's say Peridea is similar in size and rotation speed to Earth. That's 72 hours. If you take a look at the scene right here, I calculate that they're moving about 1 casket into the ship every 4 seconds, which means 15 caskets loaded per minute, which means 900 an hour, which comes to 64,800 caskets within 72 hours. I mean, let's say they take breaks or they're unionized. They're probably not unionized. That would maybe cut down the number to a half. You're still talking about tens of thousands of potential zombies. And so this gives Thrawn or the Night Sisters a pretty large fighting force. Combine that with Thrawn's legion of stormtroopers or night troopers that might or might not be dead as well. And it gives them a lot more soldiers than I first expected they would have. Now, this is just a theory. Remember, as I mentioned, Peridea is different from Dathomir. Animated is different from live action, it seems, as well. It's possible that, you know, the Peridea Night Sisters have a different way of reanimating their sisters. Maybe it's not just reanimating corpses. Maybe they're taking the spirits inside of these caskets and funneling them into other bodies. Maybe Thrawn wants to help the Night Sisters possess the entire galaxy, who knows? But with the alliance between Thrawn and the Great Mothers and the appearance of the Peridea faction and Night Sisters, it's clear that this group of witches have not only survived the Sith's attempt to destroy them, it's very possible that they'll play a big role in the future of the galaxy. But remember, the witches are not fans of the Sith or Emperor Palpatine, and they harbor a natural hatred for the Jedi. Thrawn, Baylan Skoll, and Shin Hati are also, at this point, non-aligned. Which kind of means that we are seeing the rise of the non-aligned. It's no longer just a war between the Jedi and the Sith. There are other parties involved. Let me know in the comment section below what you guys think are in these caskets and what you think about the development of the Night Sisters as one of the more powerful Force organizations left, not in this galaxy, but soon in the galaxy when they return. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, my name is Alan, and my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy.